everyone. Welcome to tonight's event. Super excited to have you all here. We've got a great, group of panelists tonight. Super excited to get this started off. So for those of you who don't know, we are the UX Come Up, and we are a community of the next wave of UX professionals who are looking for resources, connections, and a strategic guide for successfully transitioning into the UX field. But before we start, a couple houseworking things. So the first thing is if you aren't already following us on Meetup, please do. There's a link there, and we'll also be posting all of these links in the chat. But as well as Meetup, please follow us on Instagram. I would highly recommend doing this one, as this is where we share the most up-to-date information, and we constantly are sharing about our events and wouldn't want you to miss anything that's coming up. Lastly, also, please join our Slack channel. The URL is there, and again, we'll add it to the chat. Great place to find people to work with, have a conversation about UX, and just find people who are similar to you. So again, I'd recommend joining the Slack community. It's super engaging and a great place to find other people. With that said, now that we've done all the housekeeping, I want to hand it over to our moderator tonight. Some of you will probably already know her, but I'm going to hand it over to Michelle. So please take the floor.
Cool. Thanks, Frankie. And hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. Thanks for bearing with us. I know we started a little later than normal, but just wanted to make sure everyone was here. All of our housekeeping items were set. So I also could not be more excited for today's event in celebration of Pride Month and kind of talking specifically about storytelling through an authentic lens and some other things that come along with that, like talking about your identity and how that incorporates into your work, mentorship, allyship, sponsorship, all the things. I'm super excited to be speaking with our panelists today. So I would let each of them introduce themselves. And at the end of kind of short introductions, we actually want to really go big or go home, celebrate Pride Month. And we're going to do a lightning round of kind of queer identity related questions. I'm going to try to squeeze them all into 5 minutes. We have enough time for some of the UX and also fun work related stuff. And with that, I will pass it along to our panelists for short introductions. We'll start with the people in the order that you're on my screen. So we'll start with Trevor.
Of course. Hi, everybody. I'm Trevor Wagner. My pronouns are he, him. I'm based in Austin. I'm a senior product designer at Redfin, and currently I'm on the design systems team there, leading that effort.
Awesome. Next is Ife.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Aoife O'Dwyer. Pronouns are she, her. I'm creative director at a UX agency called Each Another, and I'm based in Ireland, so it's pretty late here. So it's kind of a different vibe for me, maybe. I guess I came into design in a little bit of a roundabout way. So I came through biochemistry and fine art. So definitely one of these advocates for there's all sorts of ways to get to design. And I specialized in UI design and visual design along the way. So that's very much the space I'm in now. And yeah, other than that, really into design communities and mentorship. I'm very happy to be here.
Awesome. Next is Leo.
It's a Pride event, so I'd like to.
I think someone's not on mute. Just make sure please be on mute if you're not speaking. Leo.
Hey, I'm Leo. Pronouns are he, him, based in Toronto. And yeah, by day, I'm a product designer at Drop. By night and on the weekends, I'm the director of design and social media over at Queer Design Club, which is a community of queer designers. Yeah, mostly focused in product design as my full-time job. I've been doing it for around 2 years, was studying for 3 years prior to that. So I've been in the space for a while. And yeah, just really excited to be on this panel and get to chat a little bit more about what that's been like.
Cool. And last but not least, Melissa.
Hey folks, happy Pride. My name is Melissa Oblayata. My pronouns are she, they. I'm based in Boston and I work at HubSpot, which is a CRM platform company with our headquarters in Boston, but offices all over. I've been at HubSpot for 7 years. I started as a marketing intern and then I was on our culture team. And then I spent the past 5 or so years working in diversity and inclusion. And I'm currently in our rotational program. So I'm definitely the newest person to UX of the other panelists, but I'm super excited to be getting into the space.
Awesome. I'm super excited for everyone to be here. I feel like we have such a great representation just across geos and experiences and all that stuff. Thank you again, Aoife, for joining so late your time. I'm going to start the clock for the lightning round of fun queer identity related questions. Maybe we can try going in backwards order. So we'll do Melissa, Leo, Aoife, and Trevor for each question. And the clock starts now. Who's your favorite queer icon?
My favorite queer icons of the moment are Laverne Cox and Jen Richards, both trans women, both actors. So funny. You should follow them on Instagram.
Leo.
For me right now, it's Bretman Rock and Keenan Lonsdale, both unapologetically themselves. Love that about them. Bretman's Instagram stories are amazing. You should follow him. Yeah, those are my two.
Aoife.
Okay, going with Panty Bliss, so it's pretty local. Awesome drag queen in Ireland, also a major activist, also known as Rory O'Neill or the Queen of Ireland. Pretty major in terms of our marriage referendum here in 2015. We were the first country to legalise same-sex marriage by popular vote, so that's my fun fact around that. Also, I found out today that today in Ireland is World AIDS Day, or Ireland AIDS Day, and Rory's been pretty major in terms of advocacy and destigmatization around AIDS and HIV too. So yes, Panty Bliss, look him up.
Trevor.
My queer icons are James Baldwin and Ricky Thompson, someone from a previous era and someone from the current era. Both of them were and are deeply unapologetic about being Black and queer, and just letting them know at any chance they could.
Awesome. Next question. What's your favorite LGBT film or TV show? Melissa.
So when I was in middle school, I would use LimeWire to illegally download all the episodes of The L Word as they came out. But now there's a newer show on HBO. It's called Betty, and it's about like women who skateboard in New York City, and that's sort of what I'm into right now.
Leo.
Mine is one that I just recently finished. It's on Netflix. It's called Special. It's with Ryan O'Connell. Really, really great series. Just focused on queer person with cerebral palsy. Definitely a great story to tell. And yeah, just really enjoyed it. Comedy, but also just a great to hear.
Aoife.
I picked a movie. It's one I watched recently, but it's really affected me. So it's Portrait of a Lady on Fire. It's like based in France, 1770s. It's like really stunning and beautiful, but also fair warning, I like ugly cried during that movie, but it really affected me. I really recommend it. Portrait of a Lady on Fire. Yeah.
Trevor.
So maybe some of you know this show. I'm not sure, but Noah's Ark. It was the Black queer version of Queer as Folk, Sex in the City. Someone mentioned the L Word, so it was great, and I used to watch it with my ARC. My two Black and queer best friends, Marlon and Brandon. If they're on the call, they're probably not, but I really enjoyed it. So yeah, definitely.
Awesome. We have 2 minutes left. I think we have the order down. Next question. What song do you need on your Pride playlist other than the ones we heard today?
For me, it's How Will I Know by Whitney Houston. So good.
Oh, I'll keep it short. Rainbow Dragon by Keenan Lonsdale.
Mine is Don't You Worry by Electric Fields.
In mine, we already played, which was Higher by Vincent.
What's the best LGBTQ plus place or experience where you live? Like bar, nightclub, party place, landmark?
If there are any folks in Boston or on the East Coast or in the world, you should follow them on Instagram. It's called Little Butchies. They're going to have a brick and mortar, and then the pandemic happened, but they're still going to have pop-ups, and they sell art and stickers. So you should follow them. Little Butchies.
In Toronto, it's probably Cruise and Tangos. Unfortunately, closing down to build a condo, which is very sad. Hopefully, we get a chance to go back before they do that.
This was hard for me because I was living in Dublin, which I would have said Panty Bar, which is run by Panty Bliss, and there's the George, and then there's like Street 66, which is a bit more chill. but I don't live in Dublin anymore. I live in a place called Limerick and in a smaller town. So I think my house is the queer landmark here. Yeah, so it's here where I am right now.
In Austin, I would say, in terms of bars, Cheer Up Charlie's is very queer. Barbarella's is a great place to dance. And my favorite place, which is outdoors, is Hippie Hollow. It's not directly queer, but a lot of queer people will hang out there. So I just like to go to the lake and watch the sunset. It's great.
Awesome. We're technically at the 5-minute mark, but I think one more question just to wrap up this lightning round, get to know our panelists portion of the event today. What's one way you're celebrating Pride this month?
I am giving my money to queer mutual aid funds, and I am single during Pride for the first time in a while. So I am on Tinder.
I love that. I am also on Tinder. I'll add that. Yeah, things like participating on panels like this, mostly volunteering with queer design clubs, sticking to mostly virtual things just because Canada's just getting out of a lockdown. So anything virtual that I can do is what I'm doing this month.
Yeah. We bought a big new flag that literally just came today. Also trying to get to know what, like I mentioned, there isn't really much of a queer scene around me. So I was trying to figure out what's happening in the city. And also, yeah, starting to like volunteer, donate to some of those organizations. I also have made a rule that for June, I'm only going to read queer authors. So that's another thing I'm doing. Yeah, recommend that all year round.
I try to do this all the time, but I'm being unapologetically me this month. It's June, which means that Juneteenth is also this month.
Mm-hmm.
So I get to support and celebrate my Blackness and my queerness all at the same time. So I'm just like, you know, the colors are just coming out all over the place. So I'm living it and loving it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for participating in that fun lightning round. Thanks to Melissa for coming up with those questions. And somewhat of a hard pivot maybe, but since we're talking about like being your authentic self and telling your story, which I think a lot of us can relate to, just balancing like who you are when you're at work versus not at work. But to kick it off, since we've been talking about, you know, things sailing to identity, what impact do you think your particular background or identity or experiences have on your work, if at all? And maybe we can start with Melissa.
Yeah, for sure. I think that in general, regardless of your gender or sexual orientation, what makes us different is what makes us incredible, because we are the only people in the world with our experience. And I think that there are so many layers to who all of us are on this call right now, but we're here to talk about queerness. And I think being queer and coming out as a kid in middle school and having a tough go of it is what made me the person I am today. And if I didn't have to go through hard stuff, if I didn't have to sort of experience this like realization that was as a kid that a lot of people sort of go through as adults, I would have turned out to be such a completely different person. And I think that being queer is a superpower. And I think that in the same way that you, for a group project, school project, work project, you want people with different strengths and different experiences. I think that, you know, our queerness is one thing that sets us apart. For me, speaking personally, it's made me more empathetic, more sensitive to other people. And I think that makes me an awesome person to be in the UX field because that's what we care about. Yeah, I think it helps me both as a member of a team and also someone who's designing for our end user at the end of the day.
Anyone have anything else to add?
I would agree with all of that.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything. I don't even know what to add because Melissa, you said it all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Panel's over. Go
Yeah.
home.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And we kind of, you know, the title of this event is about like storytelling and being your authentic self. So we have a question around if you could give your past self, like when you were just starting out and you're just starting your career, one piece of advice about telling your story and how to do that, what would it be? Maybe we can start with Leo this time.
Yeah, this is a really good question. It makes me think a lot. When I first started my career, it was about 2 years ago. It was definitely a different time than where I'm at now. At the time, I was so focused on just like getting that job, getting that job, getting that job that I made a lot of changes to myself to kind of fit into what I believe the industry was looking for. Um, and in doing that, I feel like I took a couple of steps back into the closet in a way. And I think that I describe it in that way because when I came out after high school, it was a completely different experience for me. And I actually like took the time to explore who I am outside of the closet. And then kind of as I was going towards graduation and entering the industry, it was difficult for me to understand kind of if this was going to be a safe space for me to kind of be myself. And what I started to learn was that sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. Um, and so, kind of the advice that I would give to myself now, knowing what I know, is to just be yourself, like from the get go, and kind of embrace who you are when you go to work. Like Melissa was saying, like we all bring such different perspectives that are needed in the workforce. Um, and I think in bringing my most authentic self now, it actually creates a more open space for other people to feel comfortable and just feel safe. I've noticed that for me, in the jobs that I've had a lot of people like just either come out to me privately or just like say, oh, like I love that, like kind of little things that I don't really think about. Like sometimes I'll just be on Zoom with my nails painted and people will be like, oh, I noticed you had your nails painted. I love that. And then they kind of go into like a queer topic and kind of talk more like comfortably with me. And I think it's helped me build more meaningful relationships with my coworkers, with my team. We build more trust with one another. And I think it's just helped me become a better product designer as a whole. It's just bringing all that kind of with me and yeah, just living in my truth.
Awesome. I actually think from some of our other like identity-based panels, there's been this common theme of like just be yourself and lean into it. And I know that's a lot easier said than done, especially when you're just starting out. But being able to tell your younger self that now definitely makes sense. Anyone else have anything to add?
Sure. I wanted to say, like, basically to echo like what Leo and Melissa were saying of, well, like when I first started my career, I think it was like 2010, my first when I got my first gig outside of college. And um like my first gig, I was fired for being gay, essentially. And this was in Texas, and at that time, to set the scene, we hadn't had gay marriage or marriage equality yet. It was such a hot topic. People were, there was still some vitriol against queer people in general. And I'm in Texas, and so um, I maybe like 4 years before that, I just come out to my mother and whatever. I had my first heartbreak and everything, and I was out. I was myself, and I was not going back in the closet. But one time my manager came to me and she was like, the gay stuff, you kind of have to like keep that under wraps because the CEO is not really with that. And so I was like, well, I'm not gonna stop being myself. I'll separate work, and then I'll be me on the outside. And so what I would do, because the hot topic was marriage equality, I was on Twitter and I was voicing my support for the cause, basically. And someone at the company caught wind of it and they didn't like that, and yada, yada, yada. They fired me, did some nefarious stuff. And it came down to the state of Texas siding with me, which is weird because you would think Texas wouldn't be into that. But they saw that they were doing weird stuff to in order to fire me, and they were like, no, we're awarding him unemployment and y'all can just face it. So you know it worked out in my favor. But from that experience and experiences thereafter, honestly, what I would say to myself then, which is something that not everybody was saying at the time, but which is like, yeah, you faced that, but you came out of it on the other side, and you should just continue being yourself and loving on that.
Thanks for sharing, Trevor. I don't know if you all, I know it's hard to keep track of the chat while you're talking, but you're getting a lot of love and like empathetic anger on your behalf for something that happened a while ago. So really appreciate you sharing that. Anyone else have anything to add?
I think that kind of reminded me, like, as Trevor was talking, I was like, yeah, there's something inherently valuable or privileged in being able to feel safe to be authentic. Like, I think that's a really important point in perspective. And I'm really grateful that you shared that, Trevor. Like, it's one of the things that I'm quite conscious of when I think of, even I think of what I might tell myself, my past self. It's like, so part of my identity, or part of my struggle with my identity, is if it's been easy for me to keep it invisible. So, you know, I have these kind of privileges. I'm white, I'm cisgendered, I'm, you know, non-disabled, and these things have kind of given me a certain amount of safety where I think I haven't had to challenge or you know, worry too much about the impact that coming out might have or being my full self might have, because I had a level of safety underneath that, or a certain level of social collateral, or whatever the case may be, or financial security even, to be like, yeah, like, I'm not even going to pretend or hide my queerness, because either I know that if I get some bad red flags from the company, that I know I can bomb out and it's not going to totally wreck my life and find something new. And I think there's a real, like, I don't know, there's a responsibility within that as well. So I think it's, yeah, I think there's like a reflection there that I had around the safety and privilege that comes with being able to be yourself as well, and that a lot of people can't or don't feel comfortable doing that. So I think that's an important thing to think about too.
Awesome. And you kind of brought up, I think, a good segue of just bringing up back that word authentic and what that means to be our authentic self. I know I've personally reflected on, like, you know, if someone decides not to be their out of work self at work, like, that's their choice and that's them being authentic themselves. So kind of wanted to pose a question to you all. What does it mean for you to bring your true or authentic self to work? Maybe we can start with Melissa or Aoife.
Yeah, I can go ahead. So for me, psychological safety is important, and high level overview is like psych safety is sort of you feeling safe enough to be able to voice whatever it is you need to voice and not fear being fired or criticized or belittled or abused in any way. So that I've been in an environment. HubSpot is a super cool organization, and I've also been managed by people who have allowed me to be me. And you know, before this UX program that I'm in right now, I built most of my career in diversity and inclusion. So I call myself like a professional gay. Like, I was putting on events for Pride Month, for Black History Month, for Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, doing all those things. And they were all like so tied to my identity. And it was also the day-to-day work I was doing and getting paid for. So that was really affirming. And I knew that by being someone who was visibly queer, Asian, woman presenting, pro gay for short, absolutely. By being someone at a small but like 4-ish thousand person company who's putting on these events and being lifted up and like rewarded and has a job for doing those things, it created space for other people to be their authentic selves. So for me, it was sort of that ping of like, kind of what Leo was talking about earlier, like people commenting on like how we're presenting, and sort of that being a segue to talk about other things, like me being pro gay, and like loudly Asian, loudly queer, loudly first generation, created that space for others. So I was like, oh, I should continue to be my authentic self, because I know that I'm affecting the people I'm in the room with, and I'm also affecting the people who are seeing the work that we're doing. So there's sort of that ripple effect from there.
I just want to hop in and say, you know, something that Melissa said earlier, which is like, you know, being fired for being gay. Like, I've had great experiences. I've worked for, you know, what I initially felt were great and safe spaces, and then they turn out not to be, unfortunately. And so, because I've had those experiences, like, I just know that that's going to be a reality, and you know, despite whatever happens, I need to be me. And like, if I'm not me, then my world falls apart. They can fall apart, their company can fall apart, but not me, like not me, not again. So as long as I'm happy and doing me, then that's all that really matters.
Leah,
just-
have any? Oh, go ahead.
I just want to say, like, no, it is a privilege to say, like, no company is worth our sanity and our happiness. And I'm like multiple years into my career at this point, so I feel like I can say that. But I just want to like +1 everything Trevor just said.
Anyone else want to jump in?
I just want to say, like, it's weird to say, like, sorry, Leo, it's weird to say that, like, to go through the trauma of all that is a privilege. It's so weird to say that, but it's true, honestly. Without that knowledge, we wouldn't be where we are right now, where we're 100% ourselves and loving it. So sorry, Leo.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I just wanted to add to the point that Melissa was bringing up about psychological safety and the importance of having that in the workplace, and the importance of noticing that before you kind of work at the company and kind of seeing whether that's there or not. Like, I think for me, I got laid off due to COVID like a couple months ago, and I was unemployed for like 7 months. And during that time, like, a lot of my time was just spent reflecting on the time that I spent previously in other jobs, and kind of how I felt, if I was authentically myself or not, and I felt like I wasn't. And so the way that I kind of like started to think about it, and just learning from other queer people's experiences, is like putting yourself first, like what Trevor was saying about like you should always come first before the company. And so what I kind of try to do now is like lean into what might be fearful for me when it comes to being my most authentic self at work. And for me, a lot of it is I have to have like psychological safety, but also like financial safety to know that if something does go wrong, I do kind of have a backup plan. And I feel like a lot of queer people grow up with that already in mind, from growing up to like coming out and not knowing what possibly your family's reaction is going to be to you coming out. And so like, I think for me growing up, that's always been something that I've always thought about, and financial security was always a huge thing for me, to have like a backup plan if things don't work out. And so during that time that I was off work, like I just kind of like built up whatever savings I could to know that like the next job that I go into and every job after that, I am going to be myself. And if there's any issues with that, I will just leave. Like, there is absolutely no reason for me to stay somewhere where I do not feel comfortable. Life is too short. And yeah, I just deserve to be gay openly.
That's awesome. That reminded me of a point I saw, or somebody made a point recently that really resonated with me as well, around this idea of there's always a cost. So, when we're talking about the balance of psychological safety and having kind of, a certain amount of privilege to be able to come out and be authentic, like, that the payoff, the risk there is that, you might get fired, or you might face some negativity or backlash or some form of oppression. But the cost on the other end is not being true to yourself, and the impact that has internally and on you as an individual. So I think that was a really interesting perspective, that I was like, yeah, like there's a cost to either decision or either situation that you're in, and whatever you decide is valid, and it's it is whatever it needs to be for where you're at. But I think it's an important distinction around the decision making for when people are thinking about, yeah, I'm entering into this industry. Maybe I have a little bit of worry around being open or being out, or what it will mean or what impact it will have for you to be open and authentic and true to yourself. Yeah, and I think this conversation is really cool. Like, I think there's like lots of really relatable stuff coming up for me as I'm listening to everybody as well so far. And I think as well, when I think about being authentic at work specifically as well, there's this idea of, if I'm going to be my authentic self, I also have to be open and accepting of other people being authentic around me. So there's kind of this element of, maybe it comes back to that idea of visibility, and role modeling, and it's you being yourself means that other people around you can be themselves. So it all comes back around to the same topics, but super important.
I know we have to move on to the next question, but I wanted to hop in and say one more thing, because something that I said actually brought up something else. When I was coming up, and since we're talking about UX come up, thanks, Michelle. There was this, in the Black community, there was this topic of this way of being called respectability politics, where you had to be, you had to say yes sir, yes ma'am. You had to like follow by the majority's rules all the time, comply. And gratefully, we're in a time in US history where we realized that just didn't work. It wasn't helpful. It's gotten us basically, in a sense, nowhere, because we're still being, murdered and harmed in the streets, and etc. And it's the same thing for the queer community too. I think what's been beneficial for the queer community is that we come out of the box like already, with colors flying all over the place. We just don't fit into the box in general. I think there are those of us in the community who try, and I'm so glad, like people like David Archuleta, who just came out recently. Thank you, great job. Who are kind of like opening their eyes to seeing like you can't fit into the box. You have to make your own box. That's all. Screw the box.
Design a better box.
I want to put up my middle finger, but I feel like it's a little too offensive for just in case this is being recorded. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for sharing. And I'm so happy to hear, we're here to learn from you all, but definitely happy to hear that you're all learning from each other and just having an awesome conversation, being true to yourselves. I feel like, when you're talking to your best friend about a job you didn't get, or like that person who dumped you, and you say it's their loss, but like truly it is that company or whoever's loss for not making that space for us to feel authentic. So appreciate everyone's perspectives. I think we've been talking a lot about the work context of being your authentic self and how to do that and what helps. And I think a similar question or topic is around, finding mentors or sponsors or allies, especially given your queer identity. So would love to hear from anyone about the process of finding those types of, support networks that you have like a strong rapport, like a level of comfort with, and feel free to just jump in, take it from there.
Yeah, I can start. Yeah, like I said, and I'm gonna keep going back to the beginning of my career and the come up, because it relates. During that time, a lot of what I felt was loneliness, being like oftentimes the only queer person at a company. And so a lot of the things that I was trying to figure out, no one really had answers to, or I didn't really feel comfortable speaking to them with people who are not kind of within the queer community. And so what I did is I kind of like went looking for that queer community in design or in tech or in general that can kind of like support, or like someone I can talk to, anyone. And during that time, I actually found Queer Design Club. And that's kind of where everything kind of just changed for me. Like, I think just having that community of other queer designers to like listen to their experiences, like relate on so many different levels that some people just might not understand. Being able to share your own stories. I think for finding mentors and things like that community has been so like integral to me, just like finding people to like connect with and help when it comes to that. I wouldn't really call them mentors or anything like that. Like, it's not like a formalized process where we like talk every week about everything or anything like that, but it's definitely people that I always like chat with and just like connect with and talk about like our experiences day to day. Like, as you continue to go through your career, you go through so many more like different experiences as you kind of grow in seniority, and how that differs. Sometimes it's hard to navigate and you just don't know how. So I would definitely encourage everyone to check out Queer Design Club. That's where I started 2 years ago. It's changed my life, and it's given me like the courage to be on a panel like this. So yeah, that's kind of where I would recommend.
I want to plus 1 million for Queer Design Club. It's an awesome platform. Also, there's a few other resources in terms of like trying to find direct mentors. So one of the places I've been meeting and talking to folks is on ADP list, which some of you might have heard of this or seen this already. I'm just going to drop the link in the chat, but there's basically like there's really senior people from like all sorts of companies. Maybe some of the other folks are even on there mentoring, but like I've met like, I don't know, like 30 plus people over the last few months and just had conversations with them. And I mean, they're across the spectrum, but like there's definitely, if you do a bit of digging around in there, you can definitely find people that are, you know, queer or that are, you know, open to talking about those types of experiences within the industry. And I think it'd be a good place to find or get access to people that maybe you wouldn't normally have access to, get some time from them and chat to them from a career perspective. And then I think as well, like for me, there's been a few kind of local mentorship programs that are, you know, a bit more niche. So like I've participated in programs that are, you know, geared towards women in design or whatever the case may be. Like there might be mentorship programs that are, you know, in your area that will facilitate or that will put you in touch with queer people or people that share similar backgrounds and experiences with you. So I definitely recommend trying to seek those out, or just straight up contact people. Like if there's people like, you know, everyone here is very vocal about their queerness on the internet, you'd probably find us very easily and, you know, reach out, connect on LinkedIn. You'd be surprised how many people are willing to give you some time, especially if they're doing the thing that you want to do, or they're in the place, in the kind of company or doing the type of job that you want to do. And if you have some shared identity or experiences with them, I always recommend, like you've nothing to lose, I mean, just contact them. I think that's a big thing in terms of trying to find mentors, especially if there isn't anything internal or there isn't like an internal group within your company that's responsible for either mentorship and or if there isn't a career group in your company, you know, go broad, go external.
I want to hop in and say there's this concept of the only. As a Black person, I felt it for sure, where, you know, I'm in a professional setting and I'm experiencing something. Maybe it's like, maybe it feels like a microaggression of some sort, but I'm not sure, and I can't. I'm the only one who's there. I'm the only black person or queer person in the company, and I don't know it. I can't fact check it. You know, I can't say to look to the other Black person on the team or the other queer person on the team and say, did that really happen? And so I think, like everybody is saying, you have to, because you're the only one, you have to do the due diligence to find out community and basically do that fact checking yourself and say, this is what I experienced. Is this a thing? And somebody will assuredly validate what you're feeling. And it probably was some bullshit. So, yeah, the only.
And I have a bit of advice for people who are going to be reaching out to people on the internet to like pick their brains and expand your design network. I treat it, this might sound stupid, but bear with me. I treat like informational conversations, whether they're with internal executives or people on the internet that I've connected with on LinkedIn, I treat our first conversation as a date, meaning I'm like as charming as possible. I'm like a super introvert, but I'm like, I'm going to be so interested in you. I'm going to ask you a million questions. I'm going to make you know that I've done my research about you and I'm interested in like, I'm eating every single word that you say up. Because if you show that investment in that person, unless they're like a sociopath or a narcissist, they're also going to be like, oh, I really like the way that this conversation with Melissa feels right now. I'm going to be as interested in them as they are in me. And then from there, whether it's like an internal executive or something, you have someone on your side. Like if you have a good interaction with this person, they're going to be like, oh, you're in this city, let me introduce you to my friend, or you're interested in a role at my organization, let me connect you with our hiring manager. So I am not good at dating, but I'm really good at professional networking. So definitely treat it like a date. It's worked for me so far. Best of luck to you.
That's such good advice. Something I say to people as well very often is, I think a lot of people are a little bit apprehensive about reaching out to people as well, but like if you have come with a specific, easy to answer request, like don't put too much of a time effort around it. Like, you know, I love that project you did. I'd love to know how you solved this particular problem. Do you have 10 minutes to chat? Like you can, you know, make it really low key just to up your chances of somebody responding as well, because, you know, there's like a barrier to the perceived effort sometimes too. Such good advice. Yeah.
I love that so much. I'm still processing. I need to like, I'm looking back on all the initial outreaches I've had, and I've been like, maybe I've been too professional. I need to be more open and warm. And I know I kind of both like what's the word, mushed like mentorship, sponsorship, and allyship together, just like a network of people to help you in your career or just in life. But definitely would love to hear if there's any potentially different approaches to each of those categories or different ways that they've been helpful in your lives.
I think what Melissa said about doing your due diligence and researching beforehand is how I would approach allyship also. I think it works for allyship also because, and I speak from as a Black person too, is like one thing that I hate is having to educate somebody who is wanting to be of support to me when there are so many resources out there for you to know already and to consume and to pick apart and to have conversations with your other like friends before coming to me. So so plus one to what Melissa said.
Anything else to add, anyone?
I think when we're talking about like mentorship and sponsorship and allyship, even like I think there's an element as well of distinguishing or being clear about what it is you want from that relationship. So, you know, when I think of mentorship, it's, you know, somebody that's talking with you, and it's, you know, mutually beneficial, and it's a back and forth, give and take. When I think of sponsorship, that's a totally different thing. Like that's somebody talking about you. It's somebody advocating for you. A lot of times you're not in the room, and I think that can be like really powerful. And I think that takes time. Like that's a deeper relationship. Like in my experience, I feel really lucky that we have, like at Each Another, we have an internal mentorship program. And when I was thinking about this, I was like, well, that's the experience I've had is like a bit of everything. So there's, you know, on the baseline, there's actually coaching, which is slightly different too, where it's like talking to you, is like getting you how to improve your day-to-day or your skill set or your competency in different things, or, you know, your direct growth. And then there's that kind of mentorship level, which is more kind of about group conversations or sharing, or maybe it's feedback on work, or it's more specific. And that's how the mentorship is set up. You know, you're paired with like a really senior principal person on the team. They're your person, your point of contact. And you have those talks which are more coaching, you have those talks which are more mentorship. And then in my experience, that person also became my sponsor internally when I, excuse me, expressed, you know, an ambition to progress within the company, and there wasn't a clear role for me to step into. So we worked together to create this creative director role, which I'm now in, and, you know, supported me and championed me throughout the process with, you know, the senior management team or operations, whatever the case may be. And I think there's a powerful distinction between, you know, what those roles are, and, you know, what your expectation, setting the expectation for what the relationship you want or want to have with somebody is, on a professional level. And I guess in terms of your career identity, hopefully they're like super chill and it doesn't go against you. I think especially once you get to sponsorship level, you really have to trust them that they're going to advocate for you. So you should know pretty quick if they're not on your side. But that's the thing, they need to be on your side.
I also, when I was earlier in my career, I felt a lot of pressure about like finding a mentor. It needed to be the perfect match, and we needed to vibe really well, and they needed to understand my like Asian American identity, my queer identity, my I hesitate to say woman because I'm probably non-binary, but that was an overshare. But anyway, I was like, I need to find the perfect match, and that was so hard to do. And then I went to a panel that HubSpot was hosting internally because we love to share our feelings at our organization. And there was someone who said, I don't just have one mentor, I have like a board of directors. Like I have certain people that I go to for certain things. And that reframe of like, oh, I don't need just one. I need a bunch of different people who I can talk to about a bunch of different things. And that was such a relief to know that it wasn't just like, you know, one person who was my everything in terms of like coaching and growth and sponsorship and mentorship. It was a circle of people, and mentors can also be peers. They don't need to be senior folks, which was also really helpful for me.
Someone that I work with actually has, so at Redfin, We have Slack channels that are dedicated to underrepresented groups. So we have an LGBTQ at Redfin channel. And one of the members of that channel is actually not a person of the community, but a mom of the community. And so she was reaching out for advice for her son who is in college. And she was saying he has mentors everywhere for every type of thing that he's interested in, but for dating, he needs help there. Is anybody willing to, to mentor him in the dating range? Nobody said anything because we all need mentors in that respect. But I just thought that was really a novel concept for me, as I'm just going to say it again, as a Black person, because we're not really taught to seek out mentors, really, or at least I wasn't. And so that concept of mentorship didn't come to me until I was like maybe like 12 years into my career. I hate to say it, but I mean, along the way, I've had people to kind of shepherd me into the right direction. And I'm grateful for those people. But looking back and knowing what I know now and doing the work that I do with Black UX Austin, which is a safe space for Black professionals in tech and UX, you have to find people that are like you, that understand where you're coming from. For instance, like a Black mentor, a Black person seeking out a Black mentor, an Asian person seeking out an Asian mentor, just because they know, they know, they just know the struggles that you're going to face. And I think it's the same thing for having like a queer mentor too. Maybe the person doesn't need to be exactly trans, maybe they do, but someone who gets it just a little bit helps a lot. And that's all I'm going to add.
Awesome. We're nearing the end of our hour, which is super sad, and our last couple of questions. So before I get into those last questions, just want to open it up to the audience. If you have questions for our panelists, throw them in the chat, and we'll definitely make sure to get to your questions at the end. But I just wanted to say, I know, mentors aren't therapists and they shouldn't be, but I feel like I've heard something similar about therapists too. Like if they share your identity, there's just so much less explaining you have to do and understanding there. So definitely appreciate everyone's perspective. I think the last kind of more salient question here, we've talked about being your authentic self, having your board of directors, psychological safety at work. And a lot of us, we're at the UX Come Up, we're helping folks who are just getting started in UX and maybe even tech or design in general. And as folks who have been kind of in the workplace for a while, do you have any advice for signs that new UX designers should look for in the interview process or anything else to ensure that they're joining a company that supports underrepresented groups?
I mean, I think do your research is, a point that's been made in other contexts. I think it applies like really directly for this. Like there's a ton of stuff that you can figure out snooping around online to figure out if a company cares or doesn't about different groups. I mean, a couple of obvious things that I definitely look out for are like, have a look at their team, their senior team, like what kind of balance of gender identities do you see? Is it diverse in general? Are they online supporting different, initiatives or groups? If their logo is rainbow colored for Pride, have they committed or supported the community in some other tangible way? Like I think there is a kind of a level of digging that you do have to do, because a lot of things can be quite surface level and it's hard to see or figure out what's legit or what isn't. But there's a ton of stuff you can figure out online, even the likes of Glassdoor, like go and see if somebody has dropped some nasty reviews. Could be some red flags in there, mightn't specifically be to do about, queerness, but like even in terms of like the culture there. And I think culture is the other key thing for this question. And you can figure some of that out online, but you can also ask directly. I think there's some questions that every interview is going to expect you to have some questions, but if you're not sure or it wasn't immediately obvious from your research that this is going to be, a good safe space for you to work in or an inclusive company, asking about the company culture, what it feels like to work there, ask about core values, any resources they provide, any policies they might have, especially around diversity and inclusion. Get them to point to examples, ideally, as well. Look for the proof of it, not just the saying, look for the doing. And there's some stuff as well, like if you get to go to the office somewhere, if you're doing an on-site like you can suss out what's going on in the actual physical space. Like, is there stuff up on the walls about stuff for Pride or queer initiatives? You know, how do people present? Like, do you see a diversity within the people that are in the actual office, or is there like a really strict dress code? Maybe you won't be able to express yourself fully in that environment. Yeah, there's like tons of stuff like that. I think that you can interrogate either, you know, virtually or in person or in an interview. Yeah. Vibe check on multiple levels.
Any other thoughts? Maybe Eve was super comprehensive in all the tips for this one. If not, I think we have one question from the audience. Rai, actually, I hope I'm saying your name right. If you're online and you want to unmute yourself and ask, totally welcome you to do so. Otherwise, I'm happy to ask for you. Sorry to put you on the spot. Maybe not. Okay, no mic. So I'll ask on your behalf, Rai. I do think we talked a little about like if your identity is visible or not and how to kind of navigate that space as well. So I think it's a little bit of a spicy question, but I think it's a good one. How much, if at all, do you use your queer identity to quote unquote market yourself or help you stand out in the market?
I can jump in. So I have a very unique name. So if you ever Google me, it's me. And I saw this question in the chat and I was noodling on it. And I don't think I like market myself as like a queer UXer or like a queer diversity and inclusion person. But going back to all the things that we've said about authenticity, being queer is really important to me. And I feel like just being upfront about it, so it's not a thing that needs to be brought up awkwardly later, though I think I present fairly queer, whatever that means. But when it comes to how I share my like personal and professional self on the internet, I'm like, I'm gay, I'm brown, I'm woman-ish adjacent. Like, this is me. These are my feelings. These are my dumb, occasionally funny thoughts. Take me as you will. So I don't intentionally go out and like think of it as my branding or marketing. I just think about how much of myself I want to share on the internet, and think about like what my boundaries are there, if that's helpful.
I answered in the chat, but +1 to what Melissa said. I want to add to what Melissa said and what I said in the chat, which is like saying that you are a queer person, whatever brand of queer you are, is basically stating that these are my values. This is what is important to me. And if you want me to be on your team, you're going to have to respect that, point blank. So if you don't, I'm out.
Yeah, just to add to Trevor, like openly like having that on wherever you are, on your Twitter, on your website, it just helped keep out those companies who wouldn't accept that, or like wouldn't, like, it just helps keep it focused. Like for me, it was always like setting the expectation up front that like I am queer. I sometimes will say it in an interview and I'll be like, hey, like I'm queer, I'm this, I'm that, like just to set the expectation that like these are the things that I care about. These are my values. So this is kind of what you can expect me to like kind of advocate for at the company. And if again, I think we said this before, but if the company doesn't want that, it's their loss. And probably a company that we do not want to be working at anyways.
Yeah, 100%. Like it is that idea of it's a marker of this is the reality, this is my truth. And if we're going to work, I mean, where you work, you spend so much time with the people you work with, you know, you need to have that sense of security and ease. Yeah, and for me as well, it's not, I don't really think of it as like marketing. I mean, maybe it is a brand if it's to do with your values, maybe. But as well, for me, it's kind of like I'm deliberately, maybe one sense where it is, it's like I'm being deliberately vocal about my queerness or my identity online, also from a like a beacon, like, you know, if you want to come and work here, let me be your signal that this is a good place for queer people. So in that sense, maybe it is marketing. But yeah, I think it is that kind of idea of signaling, or yeah, it's a disqualifier as opposed to a qualifier. Like don't come at me if you're not okay with this.
I think also you attract companies when you, so for me, I put Black and queer on my website. I think it's on my resume. It was definitely in my little bio that I, whenever you join a company and you state who you are, what you're interested in, where you're coming from, your whatever. It's like when people see that, they're like, whoa, like love that people love authenticity. So don't feel ashamed. Don't feel like you need to be hiding that. Also, right now in this day and age, like diversity, tech is trying to hire more diverse people. So definitely put yourself forward and don't hide.
Awesome. We're technically at time. We're actually 2 minutes over. I do want to give, if anyone has like final words, final nuggets, bars they want to drop, last call. If not, I want to thank the panelists again so much for their time. Someone actually said time flies when you're on a lit Zoom call, which this definitely was. Really appreciate everyone's nuggets of wisdom. I know I personally learned a lot. Just I can even take back to my personal life of, having a high bar for yourself. It's definitely a privilege to be able to do so, but knowing your worth and everything you bring to the table for all your differences. So thank you everyone so much for your time and your words of wisdom, and hope everyone has a great rest of their week. Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.
Bye.
Thank you all.